Hey, what's going on guys, RZ4 here. Today we are back once again to cover VCall decks. I'm really excited to cover this because I just really enjoy doing it. And today we're going to start off this season with my personal favorite from this wave, which is the Raptors. So it contains of the Grade 1, which is Military Dragon, Raptor Sergeant, the Grade 2, Military Dragon, Raptor Captain, and the Grade 3, Military Dragon, Raptor Colonel. So basically what happens is you just write up the Raptors, that's the traditional thing, and then you gain plusing effects by calling more cards, and then Raptor Colonel will basically just retire your board, not with board lah, retire 2 units, but in this case you want to retire more than 2, and then you gain effects. Traditionally you gain power, but for 0, because yes, this deck is actually very good 0, they went one step ahead. They actually gave you a critical as well as front row retiring. But in V, they just gave us a restand, which is honestly the best effect they could have given us because of, it gains a lot of power. So what's the best thing to do? Then just get more attacks with it. So very honestly, I'm just really happy that this deck is here because this is one of the more obscure decks I've really enjoyed. And just to have it in V-Call is just really fun. So let's get right into it. Our grade 3s, we play 4 copies of Military Dragon Raptor Colonel. Raptor Colonel has 2 skills. His first skill is when he attacks you, counterblast 1. You choose as many number of your rear guards as you wish and retire them. This unit gains 5,000 power for each. If you retired 5 or more and your opponent's grade 3 or greater, you stand this unit. So going second, this is just absolutely devastating. You can just remove 5 units from your board, which is a heavy cost, but you get 25k power and a restand. And you keep your drives. So you technically only -1 because if you retire 5 and you get 4 drive checks, it is technically a -1, which is still okay considering the amount of damage you'll be dealing. But going first, this just really doesn't work out because you don't get a restand, so you really don't want to be retiring that many units. You just want to retire the bare minimum, or if not none at all. And I guess that's fine. That's fine. They need to balance this skill out, but okay. Then you may be saying, why don't we just play stuff like Spinal Driver, which could actually just cover up the edges of your turn 3 being weak, and then you will have an absolutely guaranteed blast over turn 4. Well, we're going to show you later on in this video why we don't play Spinal Driver, so just stay tuned. The second skill of Raptor Colonel is when a rear guard is superior called during a battle phase, it gains 5,000 power. So it's just really cool because it actually helps you during your multi-attacks in the battle phase, especially because you respawn your units to attack. Now they gain a free 5,000 power, which is cool. 5,000 power doesn't really do much in the long run, but it is nice to have these numbers to help you chip over. Our grade 2s, we play 4 copies of Military Dragon Raptor Captain, 3 copies of Extortion Dragon Spinal Extort, as well as 4 copies of Regio Dawn. Raptor Captain has 2 very simple skills. When rolled upon by Raptor Colonel, you Soul Blast 1, you search your deck for 2 grade 2 or lower Raptors, which means either Raptor Captain or Raptor Sergeant, and you Superior Call them. So this is really why you never want to go into Spinal Driver, because you will lose such a great all-right effect. I mean, it's just a +2, and you get to choose your targets. One is a respawning card, the other one is a card that helps you get free gauges, so really there's not much to complain about. But of course, the Raptors are not all perfect, they have to be balanced. Raptor Captain's second skill is when this unit is retired, and if it has a gauge, you Soul Blast 1, you Superior Call this unit. Okay, so it's a respawning unit, that's really cool, but it's still a 9k vanilla. It doesn't gain much power by itself, or if not none at all. So I guess that's one of the only downsides of Raptor Captain. By itself, it's just a respawner. Raptor Captain is also the only card in his deck that uses soul, because very honestly, Raptor Captain uses so much soul that you really don't have space to cater for any other soul using card. So just keep that in mind. But I feel that Raptor Captain is still worth being played in your Colonel decks because it is still pretty good of a card. Speaking of cards that are very good, we're going to talk about Regio Dawn. Regio Dawn, when he attacks, you choose one of your rear guards, engage it. This can include Regio Dawn. So it's pretty good. It's just a free on-attack gauge. I like it. Second skill is when this unit is retired, you can Superior Call one of these gauge to a rear guard circle. You may gauge the card that was called from the gauge. Hard once per turn. So this is how you really extend your attacks. When you retire your stuff, you call new stuff, and they can now join in on the fight. Honestly, Regiodon's hard once per turn is the only thing that's holding Regiodon back from being an absolute oppressive card. So, okay, that's fine. I kind of understand it. But we still need to play 4 off because this card is just very good. Then we play 3 copies of Extortion Dragon Spino Extort. Spino Extort has a very simple skill. When he attacks on VRR, you card +1, choose one of your own rare cards to retire it. You draw a card, choose the gauge of the unit you retired, 1 gauge. You superior call it, you may gauge the card. So, if your cards are not like Regiodon, where they can superior call their own gauge, and you want to be able to pull out more cards to multi-attack, say no more. With stuff like Spino Extort, you can now pull out the gauge to join you in the fight. The downside is very simple. Spino Extort is a lot like your Raptor Captain. He gains no power by himself. Spino Extort is really there for the early game where you want to beat down with, just many more small attacks and just pull off with value, and also great for your end game where you have used Colonel to really squeeze the enemy dry. You just need a few more pokes to really call it a game. Anything else in between that and Spino Extort is just food for Colonel. So just keep that in mind. That's really why we only play that 3. Moving on to our grade 1s, we play 4 copies of Military Dragon Raptor Sergeant. We play 4 copies of Darting Dragon Blueprint, or I think now they call it Fast Dragon Blueprint or something. I don't really keep track. We play 4 copies of Ancient Dragon Iguana God, 4 copies of Prison Bird, as well as 2 copies of Savage Shooter. So with all these great ones in the deck, you may be wondering, why are we playing so much great ones? Are we playing Sentry Guard? Is this the Sentry Guard deck profile? No, it's not. But the reason why is really quite simple. With stuff like your Raptor Captain, you can really just pull off more captains. So your front row is really pretty much quite secure. In addition, with stuff like only 4 Colonel and no Spinal Driver, you don't actually open as many XL circles as you think you do. You really only have about 3 to 4 front row circles per game. So you don't need that many grade 2s or heavy leaning units. So you can really lean more towards the smaller grade 1s, the smaller little dinosaurs that will walk around Colonel. And this also means you can push for much more aggressive early game, which really helps. So let's break it all down. Prison Bird is a traditional grade 3 searcher. He gains 5,000 power if there's a gauge put this turn. Pretty good. We have 4 copies of Iguana God. Iguana God has 2 really simple skills. If you pull a trigger this turn during your drive check, you need to gauge this card. Compulsory, once per turn. So, okay. You are forced to gauge, but it is going to be free, which is fine. And that's really good enough because the second skill is when this unit is retired, you may counterblast 1 and superior call this card as rest. If you have a gauge, you may pay no cost for this. So that's really good. It's a free, revive. But the downside is that it comes back as rest, so it cannot really participate with Raptor Colonel and the entire new assault that will be coming after he attacks. So why are we playing Iguana God? Iguana God is there because we just really don't like minusing, because you're going down so many rear guards. You need something to really keep the board present, and Iguana God is the most free and consistent way to ensure that you will always have stuff to retire. So really that's the only reason why Iguana God is here. If in the future we get better response targets, I don't think Iguana God is needed, but because he's just so free, I still feel he can have a spot. Of course, we play 4 copies of Military Dragon Raptor Sergeant. Sergeant, when rolled up on the Vanguard Circle, you may search the top 7 cards of your deck for a grade 2 or higher Raptor and add it to your hand. What is the downside, you may be asking? The downside is very simple. The skill is pretty inconsistent. You really rarely get anything from the top 7, as weird as this may sound. A lot of times when I play, I actually don't really get a new Raptor, which sucks, but okay, it is a reference to how the original Grade 0 Raptor Soldier used to work, so never mind. I would have really liked it if they phrased it differently. But what I really do like though is the second skill, which is when this unit attacks or boosts, you may choose one of your rear guards without a gauge and gauge it. So this is one of the few cards where it actually allows an on-boost gauge, which is good because most of the time when you see a free gauge, it's mostly an on-attack gauge, which is stuff like Regiodon and of course Blueprint, which I will cover right after this. So The fact that they allow boost is cool that they do, but considering the fact that Raptors already have so much synergy with the whole searching great to low, superior call, you can search out for each other. The package works in a relatively safe way, so I still would recommend you to play your Raptor Sergeants in this deck. And like I said, it's now time to talk about Bluesprint. Bluesprint is an exact one-for-one, word-for-word copy of Regio Dawn. Just that the hard ones per turn is now hard ones per turn for Bluesprint, so it's pretty obvious. The card is just really good because on turn 1, you already can start attacking, engaging, and as soon as your Blueprint is retired, you just get a free Chain of Call. It floats into a new unit and you can gauge it. So really, it's just that good. Similarly to Regio Dawn, the fact that it's hard once per turn is the only reason why this card isn't busted, but for what it is pretty good, so I recommend playing it. Of course, I play, to round up my slots, 2 copies of Savage Shooter. Savage Shooter has 2 skills. When placed in a Vanguard Circle, Soul Blast 1, draw a card, you may call a card from your hand and gauge it. The downside is that this uses Soul, and we already know what all our Soul is going to. So at all costs, please do not actually ride Savage Shooter unless you really need to. So just keep that in mind. But what I really like about Savage Shooter is the second skill, which is on a regular circle, you may rest this unit, choose a card from your drop zone, and arm it as a gauge to one of your own rear guards. So you can now selectively gauge and not mill. You can now just pull a card that you've seen before for sure from the drop zone and gauge it. So if you want a specific gauge target for your stuff like your Regio Dawn to superior call, you now can use stuff like your Savage Shooter to really tool it back. You only need 2 copies because honestly Savage Shooter is quite dead on the board and she ends up more likely than not being food for Colonel. But the 1 to 2 times you get to use this effect is already really game changing, so I honestly recommend you to keep this in your list. I know a lot of people are not actually fans of this, but to me, I still feel that it's worth being played because of the amount of impact you can get from the free gauge. Lastly, our triggers and grade zeros. We play 4 Archbird, which we can play. We can actually play drop PGs because this doesn't burn through the deck very fast, unlike other touchy decks. We play 8 fronts because we do want to make sure that the new board that is superior called during the battle phase can actually attack, and with stuff like Colonel, you get multiple drives, so it's not a concern. Our starter is minimum Kano, it's the closest thing to Raptor Soldier, so fine. And I play 4 Heal Guards, because Heal Guards is just good for this deck, and we don't really need that much Counterblast. And like I said, this deck hates going first, so if you're really phobic about it, you can just stay on your Raptor Captain and just start using your Heal Guards until you're actually ready to go into Colonel at full force. But how much do you really use this interaction? Not much, but it is still worth mentioning in this video. And that wraps up our Raptor video. So the deck, as you can see, is very simple. There is really not much. Oops, they can move. There's really not much complexity to it besides your typical touchy stuff. It really is just a pocket-sized edition of Nebiros, and at the same time, it does manage to stay very in law with the way Tachikaze back in 2012 used to play, very early Tachikaze. So I'm just really glad that this deck is not complete junk, it's not counteractive to its own design, and it actually still works cohesively, which is honestly more than I could have asked for, so I'm just happy. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want to see a deck from VCall be featured, don't be shy. Leave a comment in the comment section below and I'll cover it. More likely than not if I can afford it. So yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. In our next episode, we are going to cover a reverse boss. Who will it be? Stay tuned.